The first time the villagers spotted the boy, they thought their eyes were deceiving them. He stood at the edge of the tall grass, barefoot and wild-haired, his skin tanned by the sun. His clothes, if they could still be called that, were nothing but tattered rags barely clinging to him. But what shocked them most wasn't his appearance. It was who he was standing with. Just a few feet behind him, half hidden in the golden grass, stood a lioness. Not attacking, not growling, just watching. The villagers froze in fear, gripping their tools, ready to run or fight if needed. But the boy, he didn't seem afraid at all. He turned his head slightly, his eyes sharp and alert, taking them in as if they were the strangers in his world. Then, without a word, he took a step back. The lioness flicked her tail. Another lion appeared beside her. This one, a massive male with a golden mane. And then, as if they had practiced it 100 times before, the boy and the lions vanished into the wild. The villagers stood in stunned silence. Had they just seen a human child living among lions? Rumors spread quickly, reaching beyond the small village. Who was he? How had he survived? And most importantly, was he even human anymore? It wasn't long before a team of researchers and wildlife experts arrived, determined to find the boy and uncover the truth. But when they finally did, nothing could have prepared them for what they saw. The search for the boy became an obsession. Villagers spoke in hushed whispers, telling stories of a spirit child raised by the lions. Some believed he was a lost soul, protected by the beasts of the wild. Others feared he was something else entirely, something not meant to be found. But for the researchers, this was a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. A human child surviving among wild predators? It defied logic, biology, everything they knew about nature. They set up camp near the last sighting, scanning the vast landscape with binoculars, setting up motion cameras and leaving food out as bait. But for days, there was nothing. Then, on the 5th evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, a whisper ran through the group. There, by the tree line. The team turned as one, their breath catching in their throats. The boy was standing at a distance, half hidden by the tall grass. He wasn't alone. A lioness stood beside him, her golden coat gleaming in the fading light. And just beyond them, a whole pride of lions waited in the shadows. No one dared to move. The boy's posture was relaxed, almost casual, as if standing next to a wild predator was the most natural thing in the world. One of the researchers, Dr. Evans, took a slow step forward, hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Hey there, buddy," he called out softly. The boy didn't respond, but his eyes, deep and wild, locked onto Dr. Evans with a sharpness that sent chills down his spine. Then, as quickly as he had appeared, the boy turned and walked back into the wild, the lioness at his side. The researchers stood frozen, their minds spinning. He wasn't lost, he didn't want to be found. But they weren't giving up yet. Because now, more than ever, they needed to understand his story. The next morning, the team devised a plan. They wouldn't chase the boy or try to capture him. That could be dangerous for both him and the lions. Instead, they would observe him from a distance, learn his habits, and, if possible, gain his trust. They set up hidden cameras along the trails where he had been spotted, hoping to capture footage of his daily life. What they discovered left them speechless. The boy didn't just live among the lions. He was one of them. The footage showed him moving with the pride, his steps synchronized with theirs. He drank from the same watering holes, ate after the lions had finished their hunt, and even curled up beside them at night for warmth. But the most astonishing moment came when they saw the lioness, his lioness, bring him food. A fresh piece of antelope, dragged to where he sat beneath a tree. She nudged it toward him gently, waiting until he took a bite before settling down beside him. Dr. Evans replayed the footage over and over. "This isn't just survival," he whispered. They've adopted him." The team was stunned. Wild animals didn't behave this way with humans. Lions were territorial, powerful predators. And yet, this boy wasn't prey, he was family. That night, as they watched from a distance, the researchers saw something even more incredible. A male lion, the pride's alpha, walked up to the boy, towering over him. The team tensed, fearing the worst. But the lion simply leaned in and rubbed his massive head against the boy's shoulder. An unmistakable sign of affection. Dr. Evans exhaled in shock. "They don't just protect him," he murmured. "They love him." The question burned in everyone's mind. Who was this boy? And how had he come to belong to the wild? The team was now certain. This boy wasn't just surviving in the wild. He had become part of the lion's world. But how had it happened? And why did the lions accept him as one of their own? Determined to find answers, Dr. Evans and his team scoured missing persons reports, hoping to match the boy's face to someone who had disappeared. Days passed with no luck. Whoever he was, he had been lost for a long time. Meanwhile, they kept watching. Each day, they saw more proof of the extraordinary bond between the boy and the lions. He moved among them with absolute confidence, never flinching even when the massive alpha male stood inches from him. The lioness, the one who always stayed closest to him, watched over him with a fierce protectiveness that sent shivers down their spines. It was as if she had raised him herself. Then, one evening, everything changed. The team was watching from a hidden spot when they heard a sound that sent chills down their spines. Gunshots. Poachers. Dr. Evans' stomach twisted. The lions were in danger, and so was the boy. Without hesitation, the team grabbed their equipment and ran toward the sound. When they reached the clearing, their worst fears came true. A group of armed men stood near a truck, their rifles raised. And in front of them, standing between the poachers and the lions, was the boy. His arms were outstretched, his body positioned protectively in front of the pride. And beside him, the lioness snarled, ready to fight for him. Dr. Evans' breath caught in his throat. The poachers didn't know it yet, but they weren't just facing lions. They were facing a boy who had the heart of one. For a moment, no one moved. The air was thick with tension. The only sounds were the low growls of the lioness and the distant rustling of the wind. Dr. Evans' team hid behind the tall grass, barely breathing. They knew they had to act fast. The poachers, unaware they were being watched, sneered at the boy standing in their way. One of them, a tall man with a rifle slung over his shoulder, stepped forward. "Move, kid," he barked, "unless you want to get hurt." But the boy didn't move. Instead, he let out a sound none of them expected. A deep, guttural growl. It wasn't human. It was something learned. Something he had picked up from years of living with lions. And it was enough to make the poachers hesitate. The lioness stepped closer, her ears pinned back, her muscles coiled like a spring. Behind her, the rest of the pride lurked in the shadows, their golden eyes gleaming in the fading light. The leader of the poachers cursed under his breath. "Damn kid thinks he's one of them." Dr. Evans knew they had to step in before things escalated. He exchanged a glance with his team, then stood up, hands raised. "Hey, put your weapons down." The poachers spun around, startled. "We're with the Wildlife Conservation Authority," Dr. Evans continued, stepping forward. "You're trespassing in a protected area. We've already contacted the authorities." The men hesitated, glancing at one another. The lions were dangerous, but so was getting caught by law enforcement. "Let's go," one of them muttered, lowering his gun. But the leader, his eyes still locked on the boy, shook his head. "Number. That's not just some wild kid, that's money." Dr. Evans' blood ran cold. They didn't just want the lions. They wanted him. The boy must have sensed the danger because he took a step back, his fingers brushing against the lioness' fur. Her growl deepened. The rest of the pride inched forward. Dr. Evans had no time left. He made a snap decision. "Run," he whispered. And just like that, chaos erupted. The lions lunged, roaring. The poachers stumbled back, shouting. And the boy, wild, fast, untamed, disappeared into the wild once again. The poachers scrambled, tripping over themselves as the lions charged forward. The pride didn't attack, just drove them back, forcing them to flee toward their truck. The leader cursed, firing a warning shot into the air, but it didn't stop the lions. If anything, it only made them angrier. Dr. Evans and his team stayed low, watching as the poachers finally abandoned their hunt and sped off, their tires kicking up dust. And just like that, the danger was gone. But so was the boy. Dr. Evans's eyes darted around the clearing. He had seen him vanish into the grass, disappearing as swiftly as the lions. He wasn't running out of fear. He was going home. The team searched for hours, following the pride's trail deep into the wild, calling out softly, hoping the boy would reveal himself. But he never did. Finally, as dawn began to break, they reached a wide, open plain where the pride had gathered. The lioness, the boy's protector, stood at the center, watching them with unreadable golden eyes. And there, nestled safely against her side, was the boy. He wasn't afraid, he wasn't lost, he belonged. Dr. Evans exhaled deeply. He had spent his life studying wildlife, but he had never seen anything like this. A human so deeply woven into the fabric of nature that he had become part of it. He knew then that trying to take the boy away would be a mistake. Instead, the team decided to protect him from afar. They established a conservation perimeter, ensuring no more poachers could threaten him or his pride. Word spread, and soon, governments and wildlife organizations recognized the area as a sacred land, untouched and untamed. Years passed, and though the boy was rarely seen, his legend grew. The villagers spoke of the child who lived among lions, a symbol of nature's purest bond, one built on kindness, loyalty, and love. And for those lucky enough to catch a glimpse, they never saw just a boy. They saw a lion's heart beating in human form. Some stories remind us of the unbreakable bonds between humans and nature. This was more than survival. It was trust, loyalty, and love in its purest form. But here's the real question. If you were lost in the wild, which animal would you want by your side? Tell us in the comments. And if you love stories that challenge what we think is possible, hit subscribe. Because some truths are wilder than fiction.